Welcome to the podcast about being unmessable with, no matter what life throws at you. Here is your host, Josselyne Herman-Saccio.
Hey there, welcome to Be Unmessable with the podcast. I am your host, Josselyne Herman-Saccio, and today I want to talk to you about being overwhelmed with tasks and struggling to handle all your responsibilities, especially if you're an entrepreneur or a founder or a CEO. If you notice, you're not alone. If you talk to other entrepreneurs or founders, they're also facing the challenge of balancing everything there is to do and handle. And one of the things when I work with entrepreneurs that we've discovered as a common theme is that people just say it's easier, it's quicker if I just do it myself. Like by the time I train somebody, I could have just done it 7 times over. And while that seems real, if you really look at the long-term benefits of spending the time up front to train somebody to handle a lot of the tasks that you really shouldn't be spending your time doing, it will pay off tenfold down the line. Now, that is something in your own brain as an entrepreneur that you have to kind of reprogram yourself for, because you're a get it done kind of person. That's how you ended up having your company most likely in the first place, and being successful is by getting stuff done. However, as you get bigger, or if you want to get bigger, you have to start delegating and offloading some of those tasks that no longer make sense for you to do. So there's a few things that I've discovered in my work with people that are dealing with this very challenge, and how to maximize their time and be the most effective and efficient during the time that they have. Because the one thing you can't get more of is time. You can build your team and add members, you can build your resources, you can build your skill sets, but time is somewhat finite. Until you get to the quantum conversations, which we're not going to get into in this conversation. But one thing to evaluate when you're looking at what it is that you want to delegate or offload or ask somebody else to take on, or maybe even, create the space for somebody to take the lead on something that you've been taking the lead on. One thing to look at is, what is the break even point? Okay, so this is a big hurdle to delegating tasks, and it's the time that you need to invest to train someone new, but it is essential that you think about the long term benefits. Now, most people, how they train people is they get on the phone with them, or they sit with them in person and they go through how to do it. This is the worst way to train somebody, and it will cause you to have to retrain and retrain every time there's a new person in that position. So what I recommend doing is creating videos and checklists and manuals to allow that person to do the job. Now, if you've never done that before, one way to do it is to videotape your training of the person that you're dealing with right now. However, if you have the video and then you even ask them to create the checklist, and then you check it over and correct it and add in whatever's missing, then what you'll end up with is a playbook for future people in that position. This will enable you to kind of reap the benefits of that seed that you planted for years to come, or at least months to come. Because one of the biggest things that people deal with is turnover. And if you have to retrain a new assistant every time you get a new assistant, it is very time consuming. It produces burnout for you, frustration for them. If you have the video library and the checklist and manuals, then they can refer to that, rewatch the video several times, and then come to you only with questions that aren't answered in the initial video. If you're relying on an interaction, a one-on-one interaction with somebody, and hopefully they're taking notes and hopefully they understand what you're talking about, and they're not thinking of the questions that they might have later on while you're doing the training, then you're not maximizing your time as somebody who's training somebody, and you're also not maximizing their ability to actually comprehend and put into practice everything that you're training in. So that's one thing. You've got to, realize there is a break even point, even though it might take you a few hours now to create these libraries of videos. And, one of the things when you create the videos, this is what's hard for people to do, because they just do things naturally. If you're good at something and if you've been doing it for a long time, you don't think about the steps that go into actually accomplishing that thing. So when you videotape yourself accomplishing something, so you're going to, put together, let's say, a proposal, you have to be narrating out loud your thought process. process. So it's basically putting on loudspeaker the thinking that goes into the execution of something that you want somebody else to do. So as you create the video, you're saying, and this is what I would look at here in order to determine what to say here. And first I would refer to this, and you show it all on your screen so somebody can follow along and actually kind of go through the process with you. So that's around, the break even point. Now, the other thing that people do badly, and most entrepreneurs, you can relate to this, is they don't clarify their expectations of the people that they bring on their team. So they interview them, they seem great, they're like, okay, they're very competent, they'll know what to do. People don't read minds, and even if they've done that job before, they've done it in a different environment with a different team. So you need to make your expectations super clear, actionable, articulate what you need them to do, what you expect from them, by when. Clear instructions are crucial for somebody to be able to understand what their role is and be able to win in being able to effectively execute their accountability. A lot of people, what they go into an interaction with their new virtual assistant or their new real-time assistant, and they actually don't have clarity about what they want. They'll say, well, create a system for this, but they don't talk about what they're out to accomplish with that system. Like, what's the objective? Is it to reduce the amount of people that interact with this document? Is it to reduce the amount of time that it takes to execute the entire process? So being very, very specific about your instructions and your expectations in terms of the deliverables is critical. And then there's somebody who I highly recommend buying this book. It's called Buy Back Your Time. It made a big difference for me, and his name is Dan Martell. And he has an exercise in there where you calculate how much your time is worth. So this is something that's worth doing. If you think of it as, pretty much you're going to work 40 hours a week for 50 weeks a year, what is your annual income? And then divide it by 2,000, basically 2,000 hours. And that's what your hourly rate might be if you were being paid hourly. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, you sometimes don't even take a paycheck. So you don't really know until the end of the year what your pay is going to be. But if you can calculate what your time is quote unquote worth, then you can determine who you can hire and how much you can pay them to do jobs that you should not be doing, things that you want to offload. So if you're making $100,000 a year, I'm just making up that number because it's easy to do math, and you divide that by 2,000, then your hourly rate is $50. So basically what that says to you is, if there is an accountability in your company that you are doing, but you could hire somebody for $20 an hour to do that task, it's worth doing because it's less than what you're worth an hour. And then you can be freed up to focus on the things that generate income, that unleash your creativity, that fulfill you and nurture you. So it's a very useful thing to find out what your time is worth. I know you're invaluable and priceless and all of that, but in reality, based on your tax returns, what is your time worth? And that will kind of set the cap at what you can afford to pay someone else to execute those tasks. And that includes things like doing the laundry. I mean, if you're spending 3 hours doing the laundry and your time is $50 an hour, you likely could find somebody to do your laundry for less than $50 an hour. So that might be worth offloading, unless you love doing laundry and it just gives you your self-expression, which is definitely not the case for me. But starting to calculate what you make per hour, theoretically, and what you can pay somebody else per hour will enable you to start looking at, what are some of the things that I can be offloading, and how much do I have as a budget to hire somebody to do that. Now, another tool that Dan uses, although I've done a different spin on it, and I'm going to put a link to this in the show notes, is doing an audit of your time and your energy. So what I've added into this that Dan doesn't do is, the time, yes, what actions are you taking? And then what result are those actions producing? And then whether or not that activity gives you energy or sucks the energy right out of you. And you do this audit for 2 weeks at minimum, okay? And as you start to do it, what will start to emerge are patterns. Things that you engage with that are sucking your energy consistently, you might want to look at, offloading some of those things, delegating those things to somebody who it would empower them and give them energy. But for sure, you should be looking at how you can get that off your plate. And then you'll also see actions that you're taking that aren't producing the desired results. And you can rethink, okay, well, what is a new action I could take that might produce the kind of results that I'm committed to? Or you might notice that you're spending a lot of time sort of surfing social media and it's not really giving you energy. It might not be sucking your energy, but it isn't producing results and it certainly isn't producing income. So if you do this audit for, I say 2 weeks is what I would recommend at the minimum, you'll start to see the areas that you need to look at offloading, and then you can use your formula for how much you can afford to spend to hire somebody to buy back that time, as Dan would say. And, just basically, you're going to start to see patterns emerge that you can then take action on to elevate your performance and your organization and optimize your time. One of the things when you do delegate these tasks to someone on your team or a new person, you must be clear in your communication. Clarity is key. If you clearly communicate the steps of what you want somebody to do, the by whens you expect it back, and that way you can manage them from those parameters rather than hope they get it done and hope they figure out that you need it ASAP. ASAP is not a real time. So if you can say, listen, by next Wednesday at 3 o'clock, I would like this back either before or by that time, and then put it in the calendar, invite them to that occasion so that it's in existence for both of you. Those kind of delegation tips can have you be very effective in not only freeing up your schedule, you can position yourself and your team for success as you take your business to whole new heights. So check out the time, action, energy audit sheet in the show notes. Download it. Try it for 2 weeks. Email me if you have any questions, and I will see you on the next episode of Be Unmessable With, the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Be Unmessable with the podcast. I never take for granted that you have chosen to spend a little time with me during your day or evening, depending on when you're catching this podcast. But I want to make sure that you get value every time you do spend some time with me. So if you are somebody who wants to develop your unmessable with muscles to be able to fulfill your visions in life rather than getting stopped or slowed down or thwarted, then sign up for my newsletter in the link in the show notes, and we will get you tips and strategies and videos and all sorts of resources to support you in your journey to be unmessable with.